Welcome to the Biz Coach Show, and today we are hanging out with a special guest talking about AI and AI specific to business coaching. Will, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, David. Yourself?
I'm doing really good, and it is great to have you on. Definitely excited for our topics. I think it's going to bring a lot of value to our audience, and excited to pick your brain a little bit. So thanks for joining us today. And as always, we've got Eric Whitmoyer, founder and CEO of My Biz Coaches. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, David. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, good to hear it. Sounds good. Well, cool. Well, before we kind of dive into all of our topics and some of the great insights, take just a minute and kind of explore your journey a little bit. Do you mind sharing a bit about your background with our audience today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I used to work in machine learning at a very large corporation. So I was in emerging technology in about the biggest of the big. It was a Fortune 10 company, and I've always been someone who loves being at the edge. I love solving problems that people haven't solved yet. I love new and emerging technologies and just playing and experimenting with things. And so when I decided to leave the corporate world, just because I realized pretty early on, I'm very entrepreneurial, and I have a hard time sitting still. I like to be able to work on lots of different types of problems and move really fast, and realized, being on my own and making my own way was more conducive to that. And so I've spent the last 5 years or so consulting, done a lot of consulting with data science, marketing automation is a niche I've spent a lot of time in. And now I run an innovation studio called Ascendance, and basically we help brands and leaders figure out what to do with AI and other emerging technologies, but mostly AI right now. And we build models, we'll train custom LLMs, and we'll build applications that leverage AI. So that's my 45-second.
I love it. That's awesome, and quite the journey, and certainly something that's a hot topic. I know on our show in particular, we talk about, seems like AI, if not every episode, every other episode. But I love that you also include other emerging technology, because there's a lot of other things happening right in the tech world. So that's awesome. And Eric, I guess tell us a little bit about how you and Will got connected.
Well, as you know, I'm spending a lot of time educating myself, self-educating on AI, right? And because there's not a ton of information out there. I mean, if you think about it, and to Will's point, machine learning has been around for quite some time, right? And even in our time in the wireless industry, we saw evolution of a number of things. For instance, call center technology enhanced dramatically the last 5 years that we were in the wireless space. And there was a lot that went behind that. And we saw some of that through the carrier that we worked with directly. So that was one of the places that I recognized that there's a lot going on with AI. And so, and then of course, the other part of that was because we were in retail, there was it was a very obvious thing that the retail was not going to exist in the near future, the way that it had over the last 25 years I'd been in it. And so moving forward, when we transitioned in 2017, it's been a passion project. It's something I paid attention to. When ChatGPT came out with, in late 2022, early 2023, it immediately captured my attention, because I'm like, I wasn't aware of how far along and how fast it was developing. And then when it was right there in front of your face, in the beginning, it was a lot of, how do you prompt correctly to use the language, right? There's a lot of insight there, but it was that quickly evolved into an entire enterprise of just developing and teaching people how to use AI in their businesses. And in my particular case, as it relates to My Biz Coaches, how does that relate to small business owners? And more specifically, what does the small business owner need to know, and how is it going to impact their business, right? So that's, so what happened was I've been seeking people out, looking for more information. Will and I connected on LinkedIn, and we had a great conversation about some different potential applications, even for My Biz Coaches, as well as how we could incorporate or partner in providing their solutions to particular clients that we may have that make sense to partner with. So that's kind of how it all evolved. But a lot of it starts with the passion of recognizing where things are going, And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I try and reiterate to people that follow us with My Biz Coaches is we're trying to get on the cutting edge of things and as they're changing, as opposed to, this is the way it's always been, which is the biggest frustration. A lot of our clients are seasoned business owners who've been around for a long time that are having a hard time adapting to the new technology and helping them identify, look, you need to make this transition because you're not going to be a player if you don't in the very near future. And I think the biggest thing is it's coming faster and harder than we never anticipated. And that's the piece that I think that the people that typically my age are not paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for sharing that, and we're glad you guys connected so we could get Will on the show. Definitely excited, like I said, to pick his brain a little bit. And I guess just one more question for you, Will, before we dive in. You mentioned Ascendance, right? Your company. Can you tell us just a little bit more about Ascendance and some of the work that you guys do?
Yeah, so we are a growth and innovation studio. So we do growth and innovation. And what that looks like in practice is with larger companies, often we'll come in at the strategic level and we will help their leadership or the leadership of a department or some aspect of the company internally identify a use case. So we'll help them both see what's going on, see how these trends and emerging technologies, again, specifically AI and ML is most of our work right now, are impacting their industry and identify opportunities to drive value within the company. Oftentimes that looks like unlocking the value of large data sets that are, they've already spent millions of dollars on, and now we can add different elements or bring new life to them with AI. That's been a big area of focus for us. We just did a project with Nestle that's somewhat related to that. Can't get into the details on the application, but it unlocks the value of a large data set. So yeah, we do a lot of kind of management consulting type engagements with larger companies, and then we implement as well. So we'll build the application or the model or whatever solution that we design together. And then I do work with a number of smaller companies and startups. When I say smaller, usually 2 to 25 mil in revenue, so small to mid-size, more traditional companies. And we do a lot of automation work with them, helping them kind of modernize, train their staff on AI tools, build custom internal agents that can automate some of their more manual systems and processes. Or we'll also build products for startups as well. More so startups that are building AI products will come in as a dev team. Sometimes we do venture deals as well, depending on the specific scenario, where we'll take equity in the company.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I want to make sure people understood kind of the scale of services that you offer. So that's a great overview. And I think really ties into what we're talking about today, which is AI and then business coaching. So specifically, as business coaches are working with their clients, how do they potentially advise them, but also how are they using it within their own coaching business? And so I think that breadth of services will be helpful as we kind of inform that discussion. But I think, I'm putting myself in the perspective of somebody that is watching this or listening to this, and they're hearing machine learning and AI and maybe just trying to figure out, okay, well, what does this mean for me, right? So to maybe get things started, can you share an example of a business or a client that you've helped transform how they do things by harnessing AI within their business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked recently with a recruiting firm that it's a tech recruiting firm, and they make most of their money from recruiting placements. So that means like they just had a job that they posted. They had 4,000 people apply to it, and they are going to place one candidate. So out of those 4,000 people, they can help one person. Now they get paid very well from the tech company for that placement, and that's where their revenue has been historically. But we came in and we did a strategy workshop with them, and we realized, okay, you have this large community of tens of thousands of people that you're interacting with on a monthly basis, and you're only able to help a small percentage of them. And now they've wanted to do other types of services like career coaching and things to offer other areas of value to all of these people that they can't help with a placement directly. But they just don't, to scale their time, it's just not worth their time to do one-on-one coaching for career placement or, executive placement, as they're often working with higher level employees in the tech industry. And so we realized, well, there's an AI application here where we can take all of your content, all of your philosophy, your industry expertise, because you're placing, a large number of candidates on a month-to-month basis. You know what companies are looking for. You know how to position the candidates. So you could tell someone exactly what they need to do to have a better chance of getting the position that they want, right? And so they have all that knowledge. We help them package that into an AI product that's one part education, one part simulation, and like actually an AI coach that helps you tailor your resume, simulate an interview, and position yourself to get the role that you want. Now they have a new revenue stream in their business, and it's not tied to their time. So they were able to take AI and their existing expertise and now build something completely new that can scale in a way that they weren't able to scale previously.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, what a great example, and something that people watching this maybe haven't even thought of. So appreciate you sharing that. It's interesting as we talk about AI, right? I feel like every time I, open an app or go on TV, there's an AI headline, and I'm sure that there's a lot of misconceptions about AI. And I'd be curious, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you run across when you're working with business leaders or, coaches or anybody around AI?
Yeah, well, to start, there's not really there's a lot of definitions of what AI is that are thrown about, right? And so it means different things to different people. Where I came from in the corporate world, the types of projects that we were working on were, working with billions of parameters and training complex algorithms and writing Python scripts and stuff like that. And that is a subset of AI, but also there is ChatGPT that you can log in and talk to for $20 a month. There's chatbots that you can spin up and put on your website. And so there's all of these things that are within the realm of AI. Sometimes when we have conversations with business owners, they've encountered something and they don't know the full scope of what's possible with AI because they've only encountered one specific use case or tool or piece of software. And they think like, oh, this is what AI is. And it's usually a very small part of this total realm of tools and technologies, which are now under this AI umbrella, right? So that's probably the biggest thing, is just not a lack of awareness of the scope of what all the things that are going on in the AI realm and all the different technologies that are under, this moniker of AI. And that's, obviously why there's people like us who are deep in this space, because most business owners don't have time to spend all, the years and years like someone like me has spent in a very nerdy way, just learning about all these different types of technologies. For a business owner that's really in it day to day operating their business, it doesn't make sense for them to spend their time learning about every new tool and every type of machine learning application. But that's the biggest thing, is just that education of what's possible, what's out there. Sometimes there's some misconceptions of, what sometimes people think it's magic and it can do everything. Let's just put some AI into this and it'll solve all my problems. And that also doesn't always work. Sometimes it is magic, but other times, it may cost a lot more than you think, because it costs every time you run an AI, you call an AI model. And so just some of those education pieces, I would say, would be the biggest thing we run into.
Yeah, David, I have to say, I feel like Will just called me a nerdy coach. So.
That's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
No, but I wanted to jump in there because I think that, a couple of comments that Will made as it relates to people and their misunderstanding of AI. And I think a lot of it often comes from the perspective of some version of their experience with it. And whether it was good or bad, the truth of the matter is it's a very limited scope of experience, right? It's like, yeah, I saw this once, right? So it can't work, or it doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. And often what I ask people, I'm like, when was that experience? Because my experience as it relates to what Will does is that I have a conversation with somebody, I'm like, well, there are a number of AI solutions that are out there off the shelf already today that would do any one of these things. And I'm talking about more smaller business applications that would immediately impact your business, reduce your reliance on human activity, reducing payroll, right? Creating efficiencies that don't exist in your office today because you're relying on human factors. There's so many, and I'm not trying to move away from, getting people not having jobs. It's just have people doing the high return jobs that they should be doing, not jobs that are low level activities that we look to outsource to a VA, for instance, or something like that. In many cases, AI can actually execute that far better, far faster, far more effective. But it's just a matter of understanding how you would go about setting it up. And that's why I was really intrigued by Will and, what he could kind of bring to the table as far as insight. And what's interesting about Will's experience is he got it from this massive high level perspective, but he can also relate with the smaller business applications that exist as well. And I think that's if the primary message I would try and impress upon our listeners, those average business owners that are out there today, before you discredit whether or not AI would or wouldn't work for you, discredit or credit, recognize that it would work for you. Recognize what Will just said. It's not magic solutions necessarily. It's not just going to fix everything. It will require some time and investment, but the long-term investment in my eyes that I really want to impress upon people is if you don't start looking at this now, 3 years from now, you're going to be, really kicking yourself that you didn't make a transition, because I don't see how you're competitive in 3 to 5 years in a lot of cases with a lot of these solutions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Well, I think let's kind of unpack that a little bit. So if we think about this from the perspective of a business coach that's trying to help a client navigate this AI landscape, right? Kind of what you're saying, Will, is there's AI, which is more than just ChatGPT, which is kind of what a lot of people know, but it's not this magic genie. So there's all these things in between. How does a coach go about helping that client determine what AI solutions are right for that business's specific need or industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So it comes from a mixture of one, just doing some kind of assessment with the business owner and identifying, and this doesn't have to be that complicated. Just identify one, what are you spending a lot of your time on? Identify manual processes, identify low-hanging fruit. That's usually what we come in and do. For example, we've been working with a roofing company that does about 25 million a year, and they have a large team, a lot of employees, and they're uploading a lot of data by hand, and they're doing, they have these spreadsheets where they're calculating formulas and stuff and pricing and all of that. And so we've come in and identified areas where we can start to build those as some of these manual processes into an AI agent where their employees can just interact with an AI agent. Just think about ChatGPT, except with access to custom coded tools that the agent can call. So say you want to upload a receipt to a specific database, take a picture of it, give it to the agent. Now it can actually upload that to your software, so it's connected to your business's applications and systems. So again, that's a little bit in the weeds, but basically, long story short, I would start with the low-hanging fruit and see, where are the areas that there's manual work that a basic AI tool or model could probably do. Start there and experiment. Not everyone will pan out, but that would be a great place to start. And then from there, workshop out areas of the business that, could use a little bit more complex development or complex AI work. And this does come with a little bit of understanding of what the tools can do and or what, if you have access to a development team that can write Python scripts that can do basic data analysis and stuff like that, you can do more than just if you have ChatGPT. But again, start where you're at, and then you can go deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah.
I was going to jump in there. I was going to say that, I think that the Will, and I don't remember if you actually, if this phrase came up in our conversation, but it was kind of like, what activities do you do daily on a regular basis? What are things that you do repetitively over and over and over again? That's a great place to start, right?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, from there, then you'll start to, once the business owner starts to, the light bulbs start to go off, you may identify like bigger and bigger opportunities, because they'll be like, well, actually, I wonder if, AI could help us with this other problem that we have. They'll start to see other places, and you'll get more things that come up, more business problems that come up, that are a good use case for AI. But sometimes, especially when you're coming in, starting with those easier wins are going to get the business owner to kind of open up a little bit more, so you can provide more value.
Right. And then, Will, there's one thing I do want to bring up, because I think it's relevant, particularly for the listeners that we would have. But there is a point where sometimes the development of a solution on any company is going to reach a point where the investment, at least up front, may not look like there's a real ROI. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but there is an opportunity that at times, depending on how far down the bunny trail you may go, it's like, oh, okay, well, that probably isn't worth the investment today. But the conversation starts with, if we fix these smaller problems now today, we're going to be that much better prepared to accelerate that involvement or that engagement with using AI in a better way as we grow and scale. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's very accurate, and economies of scale play a big role. If you're a startup with 2 employees, you should get $20 a month ChatGPT, or $25 a month Team actually would be better, because then they don't train on your data, but spend $25 a month on a few employees, and just start there and start learning, and maybe bring in a consultant to help do a couple hours with you if you want to learn how to use it more effectively. But right. There's also a ton of content on YouTube and all over the place that you can learn, right? So I wouldn't invest 4, 5, 6 figures into building AI tools if you're not at the point where that's valuable, where there's an ROI there. Now, if you have 100 employees and saving every employee 2 hours a week, is going to make a 6-figure impact in your business, well, then it makes sense to hire someone for $3,000 a month, or spend 5 figures maybe on a development of a tool that's going to be a little bit deeper, a little more complex, because you have more scale, right? Yeah. So it definitely depends on where you're at, and also and sometimes the scalability of it too is a big part. Like if you have a lot of customer interactions, and we can scale those interactions, we can scale your sales touch points or different elements of what you're doing with AI. Then it's kind of like advertising. If you spend a little bit more, you're going to get those dollars back, right? So just identifying where that ROI is coming is really important. But it is something that wherever you're at, I would say you should invest into something, whether it's $20 a month or $10,000 a month. Start where you're at, but doing nothing would probably not be wise, considering how powerful these technologies are going to become, even from where they are today. So to just have some exposure to them is going to give you a ton of ROI, no matter what level that exposure is.
Yeah. And David, I got to jump in here because he just touched on something I want to reiterate as well. Will, what's your take on AI evolution when you compound the concept of quantum computing and the impact that that's currently having with the growth of technology?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say when certain things are going to take place, right? There is a lot of talk at the highest levels around AGI and superintelligence and some of these things that are not always clearly defined or well understood. They're often hype conversations. I think that at a certain point, AGI means artificial general intelligence. That's the point where the models, by some metrics, are as intelligent or more intelligent, or as intelligent as humans, and super intelligent would be more intelligent than all of humanity combined, technically. So, and people are predicting that this is going to happen, within the next 10 to 20 years. And so there's obviously a lot of hype and some fear and interest around what is that going to do to the business world, to the markets, when we have those kinds of technologies at our fingertips, when a large corporation can spin up 10,000 agents that replace 10,000 employees in a second and are more effective, work 24/7 and cost a few dollars a day or less. So I think there is real concern and also optimism and excitement around the possibilities on the flip side, because there's always two sides to it, right? And every industrial revolution, we used to have people working their lives in factories, and there's still people that work in factories, but it's not the same type of jobs, and not at the scale, not in America, not here in the West. So, and I don't think that we would convince many 18-year-olds that going back to the textile mill that their great grandpa worked in is like something that would be desirable. They would be like, no, why would I? I would never do that. That's crazy, right? But people are going to be thinking that way about some of the stuff that we're doing today. So I think that's a optimistic reframe that is helpful for me and helpful when I communicate this. Is there's going to be new stuff. There's going to be new uses for human time, and maybe we'll be able to spend our time on more valuable things. And that maps back to the short term, where even there's some resistance sometimes to using AI tools in businesses right now, because employees are afraid they're going to be replaced. And what I tell them is it's here to make your life easier. It's here to make your work easier, make you more productive, make you look better. So I would embrace it as that. The alternative just doesn't seem, it's like, well, if you bet against it and then someone else uses it, probably not a good scenario. But if you embrace it and then you learn to work well with it, in 5 years, you might be working 20 hours a week to accomplish what took you 50 hours a week. And now you can allocate some more time to more valuable things or more creative and strategic things. Right. And so, well, that kind of answered your question.
Appreciate that. Yeah. I would tell this quick story. In the 80s, when I grew up, my ambition was to become a stockbroker. I'd seen the original Wall Street, 1987. I'm like, I'm going to be Charlie Sheen in the Wall Street. And, but I remember at the same time, there were tons and tons of companies. I grew up in the Northeast, and there were tons and tons of car manufacturers and steel mill they were shutting down production facilities and bringing in robotics, and people were picketing everywhere. And it was, as a matter of fact, at one point I was an employee crossing a picket line because people were striking against the corporations. And I share that story to kind of reiterate what, at that time, it was robotics taking over their jobs. And in my immature, inexperienced, didn't really know, I'm looking at the scenario going, these unions are going through this process, and they're paying dues for these unions, and they have access to capital, and the companies are actually offering them money to send them back to school to educate them on a skill set. Why not go and get a skill on how to fix the robots? That seems to make a lot more sense to me. And despite the fact that I say it was immature and inexperienced and everything, I really think that I'm like, I don't know why people went, because it's outside their normal scope. I get that. But, and I think that I don't think that that's changed dramatically in the last 50 years, 40 years, whatever it's been. I don't think it's any different. I think that the reality is that we embrace the change, feel out, how can I adapt, whatever portion of it I can adapt, because that's only going to make me that much easier. It's only going to make it that much easier for me to adapt as things change, because it will. You can't stop the change. It's better to get on the front end of it and try and ride the wave than it is to sit there and wait for the wave to come crashing down on you.
Yeah, and also you don't get to vote on the future that you want to inhabit if you don't embrace change. So you
great added point.
You can't complain about the future being something that you don't like if you haven't tried to contribute to creating it, and at least creating it for yourself and your family, your business, etc. Like we can't control everything, but you can go learn a skill. You can go, and it's so much easier and so much probably way more accessible than it was in the 80s to what you're speaking to go learn about robotics. Like you might have to go to school for that. Whereas to learn how to to leverage ChatGPT and combine that with your expertise in an industry, well, now you can speak to an industry and you can use AI. There's going to be a place for you somewhere, right? And it is scary sometimes to have to uproot your identity around, this is what I do. But if we can get people more comfortable with that and make their identity less tied to like, I'm putting this widget into this box and this is my function. You're a human, you're creative, you're strategic, you have all these skills, and you're an expert in these industries. Now, your title might be different, your function might be different, but there's going to be something for you to do if you embrace change and you continue to learn.
Yeah, agreed.
Awesome. Well, I think you both have made a compelling case for why everybody needs some sort of AI, right? Whether it's the $20 or $20,000 a month, right? But as I'm thinking through this as a coach that has to advise maybe a client or a business owner on this, there's always going to be some risk, right? When you're adopting new technologies or transitioning portions of your business to AI, whichever solution you utilize. So, any advice for that coach that needs to advise a business owner about the risks in transitioning or adopting AI and how they can mitigate those risks?
Yeah, I would say test things more than once. If you build, especially with some of these public facing tools, internal tools, slightly less risk. The risk would be having like a function or a program that's giving you inaccurate answers. So again, like test things and have a testing process before you just trust everything that the model says is gospel, right? But externally, I think the bigger risk is kind of brand and brand experience and brand credibility. And that's some of the early debacles that we've seen have been like airline programs or airlines with chatbots giving improper information about refunds and other programs and stuff like that, or Google releasing models that I don't even want to get into that whole conversation, but they released some models that didn't function properly. And it was kind of a funny thing, but they lost some credibility for that. And so, yeah, I mean, that's the biggest risk that I would see would be just being so gung ho and cowboy about it that you don't still have some rigor in your systems and processes that you're building. So if you're releasing a chatbot onto your website or an agent internally, pilot it with some of your employees. If you're a really small company, it's maybe a little easier. If you're bigger, there's a company I just talked to that's about 5,500 employees, and they're piloting tools with 1,000 of those employees, and then they'll expand and they'll get feedback from that first group. And so have some intention behind how you roll these things out. That would be the biggest thing, and then test them before they go live publicly. For sure, do that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And as you're talking about that, I'm thinking about certainly there's the brand reputation, and there's other factors I think that need to be considered. One of which is kind of ethical considerations. So any advice to a coach or a business owner around maybe some of those ethics when implementing AI?
Yeah, data privacy, especially for specific industries like healthcare. I've done my corporate background was in healthcare. I work with some healthcare companies. You can't just upload patient data, care data to a public model. You have to have, you need to know the chain of like where that data is being sent and all the places that it's touching. Because exposing that publicly is at least problematic, if not illegal. So there are some real risks depending on the industry that you're in, fintech, finance, healthcare, especially, or government applications as well. So some industries just need to have a higher level of rigor around data privacy and data security. And then there's specific ways that AI could be used in marketing, advertising that could be manipulative, and maybe they're attractive in the short term because you can go viral or make a few bucks with a campaign. But again, like the long-term impact of that, I know I'm being a little bit vague, but just being really intentional with how your technology is showing up in the world. Would you, if someone uses your AI models or your application that's built around some AI concept and that's out there, does that positively reflect on you and your brands? Does that feel like you're standing in integrity when you release that into the world? If not, probably don't do it. So that would be at least a rough barometer.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. It's funny as you're talking about all this, I'm thinking, man, there's so many things to think about, so many things to try to stay informed on. Any advice for a coach that is, really trying to get their hands around AI so they can advise their clients properly? Like how do they stay up to date on everything that's emerging?
Yeah, I think that one, just using some basic tools on an ongoing basis is probably the best, even more so than consuming content. Actually just using some of the tools and being curious, even if it's 15 minutes a day, I go play with Claude or Chat or GPT 4.0 and I try to create something valuable for my business. I write, try to get it to write some copy for my LinkedIn posts or something. Pick something. There's so many different use cases, and experiment and just spend a few minutes on it a day. I think that's the biggest way. And then biggest way to keep yourself up to date with all of the new features and things that are being released, because on a month-to-month basis, Anthropic just released a feature in their newest model where you can basically build a functional, like you can put any kind of PDF into it and you can build a functional dashboard without any coding, just with prompting. And so, that has a lot of applications for data analytics, right? And so if that's part of what you're doing, maybe you're a coach and you're providing dashboards or analytics to business owners. Now you may have just saved yourself a lot of work or investment in being able to do different things, but you wouldn't know that if you weren't playing with the tools regularly and keeping yourself up to date. So, and then I think X and YouTube, whatever platform you'd like to spend time on, there's a lot of creators out there. I can share lists of creators if that's helpful for your listeners too. But even my channels, I think there's a ton of people out there talking about it. But yeah, I would say probably use the tools first and then go follow creators to be curious and learn.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the things that obviously using ChatGPT last year, beginning of last year, was interesting. I used it more and more throughout the year. I learned to use copy. I learned to use different prompts to develop my own GPTs, then to help me with content creation and things like that. Then we got into video AI, which we use to strip out reels and make our video content for social media. What we were getting proposed for somebody to take our podcast and turn it into reels and to put it on social media, and what an engineer, not an engineer, but somebody who would do that, right? What we can do, have ChatGPT do, is 80% of the work, right? And it's it's a $50 monthly application or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's evolving. Like literally, we got it 6 months ago, I want to say, and already they've had at least 3 or 4 significant enhancements of the software and what more it does than it did 6 months ago. But yeah, you get video AI. Fathom is another one that we use extensively, particularly in the coaching space. Interesting enough, as David, as you asked that question, I introduced, as we offer a program that helps people build their coaching program. And so we help people, even if you're an existing coach, we have solutions that we offer and that I've tested and used, other coaches have tested and used, and we make that available and we show you how to use the solutions. But something as simple as Fathom, 2 years ago, I'm going to say, this thing was a free, Fathom was free. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. Let me plug it in. Let's see if I like it. And I ran it because it was a free solution. I just ran it while I was doing different conversations. And then I started getting the assessments. And I had a client who actually asked me for the assessment. And so I sent the assessment after the engagement, after our coaching call, and they're like, well, this is amazing. Hey, can you stop sending me the stuff that you send me through the software, which is a software we license? And I spent a lot of money to capture all my contact and all my information, all my notes, and it chronicles all my notes and everything like that. He goes, this software Fathom, whatever it is, he goes, this is phenomenal. Just send me that. That's better. So I'm like, this is an amazing application. And the more I started sharing with more people, they're like, oh, this is awesome. Where did you get this? And it literally was just something I started. And then, of course, I tried it with 3 different applications. I tested it out, and that was the one that we felt was the most practical and applicable for our business model. And it just literally shows up on every call, records the call, and then there's my notes. And it's a better recap than I was doing, because I was in the beginning and writing all my notes and then capturing it in Word or whatever, and then converting it to a PDF and then sending a PDF out. That was just 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Today I have the conversation. I can be fully engaged in the conversation. I don't have to worry about taking notes. And I'm going to say the notes are easy 90%. And better than my personal human notes would have been if I had taken them. So yeah, we talk about use applications, and there's some basic ones right there that, and again, people may not necessarily look at that and say, oh, that's AI. Well, that's absolutely AI. It's just, the use application, we don't necessarily associate it sometimes because we get fixated on iRobot or whatever.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, as we kind of wrap up the conversation today, I know you don't have a crystal ball, or at least I don't think you do, right? But as you think about kind of the AI,
he's got an algorithm running in the background.
Yeah, he's got forecasting. But as you think about kind of the landscape, the next couple months, next couple years, any trends that you would envision, or maybe new applications of AI that you think our listeners should kind of be aware of, or maybe consider doing some research on, so they're prepared for what's coming down the pipe?
Yeah, I think AI agents are going to be the next hot trend. You're starting to see some buzz on X and other places where early information spreads. AI agents that are not fully autonomous, sometimes fully autonomous, but semi-autonomous, where you're able to say, for example, if you use Slack and you have AI agents in your Slack that act and respond the same way that your employees do, and now you can, instead of slacking your copywriter, you Slack your AI agent copywriter or market research, those things are basically possible now. It's just kind of wonky to set up the interfaces and such, and that's something that we do. And so we're heavily invested into AI agents and have some offers centered around agents, but I think they're going to get so powerful in the next 2 to 3 years that people are going to, instead of going to Upwork, they're going to go to an AI agent for specific tasks. And there's going to be programmer agents, there's going to be marketing agents, there's going to be different type customer service agents that will go and you'll give them tasks and they'll go and execute tasks and create their own, you'll give them a direction, they'll create their own requirements. And it'll be more and more, right now it's still like people are very hands-on with them. Like maybe they'll run a report or a function, but it's still like very hand-holding. We're going to get pretty quickly to a point where for certain types of tasks and functions, you're going to be able to go message an agent like you would an employee, and they're going to go write some code or build a website and come back in a day, come back in a few hours, and it's going to be surreal. So I think agents is one. The other thing I would say is probably voice interfaces. So text is a common interface right now, but voice and conversational interfaces with AI agents with voice is going to become bigger and bigger. Again, that's possible now. These things are all here today. But the user interface experience and the power of the AI models behind the scenes are going to improve greatly. So, yeah,
well, that's something to think about.
Yeah, I got a question because I've been playing with the AI agents a little bit, Will. I literally did a PowerPoint presentation the other day, and it created. So I asked for an outline of the topic that I wanted to cover. I asked it to put it together, with the parameters, and I outlined all the different parameters that I wanted, and it literally went so far as to actually build out the slides in PowerPoint. I mean, there's some things that I need to edit, and I just hand that off to the VA, and I did a 25-page PowerPoint presentation in probably including setup maybe 15 minutes. So yeah, it's pretty impressive, and it's a little clunky still, to your point, but if I had it set up correctly, my bet is it would have been even more efficient than what I did, because I was muscling through it trying to do it on my own. But that's pretty impressive. And then we were doing some work with video and voice, recreating, for instance, my likeness with my voice. Mm-hmm. Haven't really kind of nailed that one yet, but man, it's close.
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram account, at LinkedIn as well, it's just easier to access via Instagram. A good chunk of my reels from the past 6 months have been a AI replica of me, and there's editing and stuff in there, so it's actually kind of hard to tell. But I mean, I was creating pieces of content where I had an AI model. I had it trained on my past work, had an AI model generate the script, had another model generate a video trained on other videos of me. And so it was literally from start to finish. All I had to do was think of an idea, and then a piece of content was created end to end. Now, I mean, I had to hold its hand again through some of those steps, but right. We're going to get to your point. It's a little, you got to work with it a little bit. We're getting to a point where that's going to go away or be diminished as well. It's like training an employee, right? AI is a kid right now. It's growing up. It's getting more intelligent. Pretty soon, it's going to be at an advanced level where now it's maybe kind of like your intern, right? So,
a great analogy.
Always learning. Always learning.
Yeah.
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 Awesome. Well, cool. Well, as we get ready to wrap up here today, Will, just great insights, and really appreciate your time and expertise on kind of all things AI and how that impacts the business coaching space. Anything else that you want to share about Ascendance before we conclude?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I'll share is just kind of the idea of what Ascendance represents. I mean, the concept of Ascendance is about how growth is going to evolve in the AI era. So Ascendance is growth, like oriented towards a vision, oriented towards your highest potential. Oftentimes in business, we just grow and grow and grow for growth's sake, but we're moving towards a time where you have to be strategic about your growth. Growth without any direction or purpose in the body, we call that cancer. And in business, sometimes we call that quarterly earnings reports. And so I think it's a time where, to the point that we talked about earlier, where people's identities are going to have to shift, and businesses' identities are going to have to shift, and they're going to have to shift for you to stay in business too. If you lose your edge, you lose your moat. Because of AI technologies that can replicate the thing that only you could do before. You need to be able to tell a compelling story about what you're doing in the world and have a vision of the future that you're trying to bring into the world. And I think that part is not talked about as much, but I think that's going to be very important for a lot of business owners and leaders as we enter this time. And so, that would be the only other thing to bring up about Ascendance, is that's kind of, we do all this tactical work and development work, but really we always start with vision, and we want to come back to that. So,
awesome. Well, thanks again for everything today. If people want to get connected with you, Ascendance.one is the website, and then social media, is that your handle there? Is that the best place to find you as well?
Yep, that is my handle, King Will XM, on pretty much all social media platforms. LinkedIn's just my name. And that's the website. So happy to, if you have a crazy idea or you just want to understand what's possible for you and have a conversation, I'm always happy to chat. My DMs are open.
Awesome. Sounds good. And we'll be sure to link that in the show notes as well. So thanks, Will. Eric, anything that you want to share about MyBiz Coaches before we wrap up today?
No, I'm just going to do what I've done in the past. I'm going to throw a teaser out there. We got some big stuff coming in the very near future. Let's say a couple of weeks, another big announcement coming.
All right, cool. Always keeping us waiting, Eric. Always got something, an iron in the fire, right? That's awesome. So cool. Well, again, thanks to you both. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future episodes. And gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. We'll catch you on the next episode.